Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of The Blaze Bell Show. Today's guest is Jiu Jitsu teacher Stephanie. She is a mother, a childhood trauma DVSA survivor, a mental health advocate, and an avid martial artist alongside her partner Hunter. She is also the 2021 recipient of the Victims for Justice Phoenix Award. Stephanie wants to help people improve their quality of life by inspiring them to fight for themselves. This episode is full of incredible healing tools as we hear how she has navigated overcoming so much. The Blaze Bell Show is brought to you by Elevated Oats. This Alaskan-based women-ran company is amazing. Take your adventures to the next level and become a granola gangster at elevatodoats.com. Now let's dive in. Hello, everyone. I am here today with one of my favorite people, Stephanie Nan, and I'm so excited that we are having a conversation together today. Yay!
Me too. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So Stephanie teaches women's self-defense at Legacy Jiu Jitsu. She has a really kick-ass TikTok page that I'm becoming more and more obsessed with, where she shares a lot of healing tools, and it's really creative and fun. And so I would just love for you to share with us a little bit about your journey. And I mean, you are constantly sharing just really epic healing with the world, and I want to know why, like what led you to this point, and like where'd you come from, and why are we getting all this juicy goodness from you today, and what are some of your like future goals too? So
Absolutely. Where do I start? So let's start from like the beginning. A lot of my past has to do with down to the nitty gritty, like the core of it is domestic violence. My family has a long history of domestic violence, and I feel very excited to be breaking the cycle. My With the domestic violence, I was the oldest kid. So like if my mom wasn't home, I was the one who got the brunt of the violence. I got to experience a lot of the violence. I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and I spent a lot of my childhood protecting them, trying to shield them from seeing it and feeling it. I just always knew in my heart that something was wrong, but at the same time, didn't have the words to be able to put together what was wrong. I felt like looking back on my past, I've done a lot of healing to go through that. So it doesn't bother me anymore to be able to talk about it and bring it up. But something that lights me on fire is not having the language and the interception that I needed. I felt like as a kid going to school, there was many times that somebody could have helped me out and could have intercepted. I feel like in my own way, I lashed out, trying to get people to acknowledge. Like I very much remember situations where I'm telling my teacher, like, you can't tell my parents this, like they're going to hurt me, like you don't understand how big of a deal this is. And maybe back then in the early 2000s, that was like maybe an exaggeration is how they took that, but it was very real to me, and this fear of going to my parents and telling them things that could end up in me either having to spend extended time outside or in a closet or hit. Is That fear was very real, and I lived with a lot of that fear for a really long time. And DV kind of exploded into this, in my own life, into childhood trauma, neglect, into relationships that weren't healthy, into me living in survival mode. And I my parents were into sports. That was really interesting. My dad was very much into soccer, and he wanted me to be a soccer player and pushed me hard into that. My mom was into I forget the sport, lacrosse. She was into lacrosse, and so she also did a lot of running and a lot of sports herself. And so I naturally gravitated towards sports as a way to try to relieve some of this energy that I was constantly feeling. I was chunkier as I was getting older. I noticed that I wanted to be fit, and I wanted to figure out how other people did that. And so unfortunately got got kicked out of a lot of sports for violence and fighting. I was a very angry kid naturally. And one day my mom had signed up my brother for boxing, and I was 16 and just got my driver's permit, and she asked me to go pick him up one time. And so I went to go pick him up. He asked me to come inside and see what he was doing. He was teaching me how to punch on the bag. And one of the coaches approached me and was like, "Would you like to do this yourself?" And I'd be like, "Oh man, are you sure? Like, I can do this?" And he's like, "Yeah." Of course, my mom thought that was absurd. Like, ladies don't get into fighting. That is not okay. That is absolutely crazy that you would ever think that this is okay for you. And I ended up like, that kind of fueled me. I was like, yeah, I was in my rebellious teens, so I was like, oh, my mom said no, I'm gonna do it. So I jumped full force in, down to the point like I was so obsessed with this sport, with boxing, and I just needed more of it. Like, I understood boxing, right, which is they don't consider themselves a martial arts, but I do. They're a martial arts that focuses on striking, right? And so I got very much into striking, but I experienced violence in all kinds of ways, right? I know what it's like to be pinned up against a wall by my neck. I know what it's like to be on the floor, like covering yourself while somebody's beating on you. Like, what's the answer to that? I need that. And I needed to know how to protect myself even more. And so I probably missed this, but I was also severely bullied. So I wasn't like safe at home or at school. So this is why those answers are really important to me. So I found a gym that offered Jiu Jitsu and Muay Thai. And I was like, yes, I've got kicks and the floor covered. And I went as many times as I was obsessed. Like, right after school, I went straight to the gym and just like hours of putting in the work. And that's how I found myself in martial arts. It just made so much sense to me. And now looking back at, like, now after years of practicing, looking back, I can understand where that fuel had started. I had also, I know what it's like to get into martial arts and feel like it's the answer. I also know what it's like to be attacked after knowing these techniques, and the mental turmoil that comes after that, like feeling silenced, because if I told anybody like, yeah, I practice this martial arts actively, but I had also been attacked, maybe my attack isn't validated, maybe I didn't try hard enough or fight enough. And so I got to deal with that, on both sides of learning martial arts, and that mindset after being attacked after a year of practicing. So being a self-defense coach now, so I coach a women's combat jiu-jitsu class. It feels like it was meant to be. Like, I feel well-rounded. I feel very empowered. I feel very excited to be in this position where I get to, for free, offer a service to my community that empowers women and makes them feel strong walking out to their cars, and makes them feel just strong in themselves, just themselves feeling very empowered. I can't find a better word than empowered. It really encompasses everything that I want to give other people.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's pause there for a minute because that was a lot of information. And so I want to go back to a few of the different points. First of all, I just want to say, like, I'm so sorry that you experienced so much violence. Like, I didn't know that about you, and I didn't know it's to that extent. And I know we all are able to look back on our past and be like, that's what brought me to this place. And it's okay. Like, I'm so strong now. But at the same time, like, it's not okay. It's like, it would be better not that. So, I just want to like honor you for surviving all of that and getting to where you are today. And as you and I know, healing it never ends. It's always ongoing, but we get to be at these new levels of, like, the problems I have today are so different than the problems I had 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. As we continue to grow and learn and become more and more self-aware, like, things definitely get easier. So when it comes to, like you were saying, there was a lot of athletics as a kid, but you're also saying that you were, I think you said chubby. So do you feel like, did you have an eating disorder or like emotionally eating? Because I know that's really common with kids that are, with anyone who's abused. Was that part of it?
Yes. Also, when we were younger, the food pyramid was very like it was taught in our schools. I remember having a poster in almost every classroom, right? And now we know that that's not the right way to eat.
Yeah.
So my family very much followed that. Also, we were very poor, so we kind of ate like I remember eating like once a day, and it would be something like McDonald's or Subway or something that had to do with junk food. I'd have cereal or like the school lunch, right? Like I
Yeah.
qualified for free lunch. And so like if I didn't eat at school, I would on breaks, I would eat whatever my parents fed me, which was usually unhealthy. And they didn't know better. We were
Yeah.
also Mexican, so we ate a lot of greasy foods. So I naturally got really big, not understanding nutrition. And I was very much like my family was obsessed with looks. Like it was very disturbing with how obsessed with looks they were. So I constantly was being compared to my cousin who was skinnier than I was. And like, why can't you be like her? Why can't you look like her? Like, why don't you do the things that she's doing? And it was very toxic, and I very much took it in, and all I wanted to do was be skinny. Like I didn't know what that meant, but I just knew like I had to be skinny. We were obsessed with the size 0 back in the day. And so when I got into working out, it was with the intention of being a size 0. And it very much came with an eating disorder. I started throwing up. So I started my bulimic disorder when I was in 5th grade. I had watched a video of another girl doing it, and I was like, that's the answer. And that's when that addiction started.
Yeah. And how long did that last for you?
I was able to get myself to stop while I was pregnant with my son. And then I picked it back up. So I got pregnant with my son at 19, and I was able to, or I picked it back up after my pregnancy because I wanted to drop the weight. Like one of the first things my mom bought me was a waist trainer, like day out of the
Oh
hospital. It was
God.
like, yeah, it was. She took me shopping for waist trainers, and I remember like she's like, you need to lose this fat immediately. And I was like, okay. And so
Oh,
I picked it up hardcore for another few years, and I've been free of the eating disorder for the last like 6 years. I've been pretty clean from
awesome.
I have triggers, of course, but like we deal with that when they come.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Like to me, that's so huge. And I suffered with bulimia for many years off and on. And I feel like struggles with food to me are so much more complicated than struggles like other types of addictions or, substance abuse. Like we don't have to drink alcohol. We don't have to do drugs ever. But we have to eat like every day, so I'm like, really again today, like every so I just feel like it's so much more complex to heal from those things because we're going to have those triggers and we're going to have certain foods, all of that. So I think it's a really, really big deal that you were able to get good control of that and get free of that. That's huge. Yeah.
Me too. I feel like that naturally came as I started slowly getting into the healing journey. Some of these things happen naturally, and that's how I felt with my eating disorder is I wanted to get healthy, and I knew that bulimia wasn't the seed was planted that this was going to hurt me if I didn't stop. It was going to not be essential for being the athletic person that I wanted to become.
Right, right. Yeah. And for me, I kind of released it along with like when I got sober and I just realized like it was the same part of my brain essentially. And because I was still having my food issues, even though I wasn't drinking or using. And finally, like one of my mentors was like, you're still lying. Like you can't keep doing this. And she said, fine, if you want to keep doing this, you have to keep the door to the bathroom open if your kids are around, like every time you do it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess it is a secret, like weird thing I'm doing. And I was used to it at that point, and especially I feel like with eating disorders, like we think nobody knows. It's almost like this secret best friend, like, I don't know. It's such a weird, it came with like great relief and then great shame. And it's this constant relief and shame cycle for me. And so anyway, I was just like, okay, this is the same kind of thing. Like, this doesn't fit with who I want to be and where I'm going. And also it is super dangerous. People do get really bad, like physical problems from it. So I'm glad both of us are like healthy. Cool. So breaking cycles, you know, I'm obsessed with breaking generational cycles, and I love hearing you talk about that and just for your family. And how I'd love to know, like, what are some of the things you've been able to do to get to a place where you're even aware? Like, I know it's so common that whatever we saw growing up, we repeat just unconsciously, unless we are really have figured out a way to make conscious choices and heal. So how did you get from like being violent, being kicked out of clubs or whatever, you know, like, to getting to where you are now, where you figured out how to channel it into something positive and not repeat it as a mom or as a partner? Or did you repeat it for a while?
That's a really good question. So 2016, just the worst year ever for me. And so my son is young, and me and his father broke up right away. And I started drinking when I was 13. So I was able to quit while I was pregnant with my son, thank goodness. But as soon as I weaned off my son off my breast milk, I immediately got back into it. It was like something that I couldn't wait to do. So once I got back into drinking, I went full force. Like, I was a functioning alcoholic. I was working at this place that would incentivize you to, like, they would, if you did things and sold things in a certain way, they would put money in this card for you, and you can only buy gas and booze. And so of course I bought so much booze.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, and
Funny.
so made good money at this job, but hated it so much that, like, I almost used it as fuel. Like, I have to drink in order to survive at this place. So I 2016, like, I had gotten married to this man, thought that was the answer to everything. We were going to get a divorce like a year later, and so I felt like my life was completely falling apart. And I was living with a friend, so almost homeless. And so I had been couch hopping, was able to find I found a friend that I was able to move in with. And I was drinking, and I I had the right idea, right? So I come home from Anchorage to Palmer, and in I left my car at home. Somebody else drove me home because I was way too drunk to drive. But I create this dramatic situation where all of a sudden I need to go to my car in Anchorage. I take my best friend's car, I wreck it. And thankfully I didn't hurt anybody, but I got a DUI that night. And I was sitting there in the jail cell, and I was in the holding cell, and I remember thinking, like, oh my God, like, I was sitting right next to the toilet, and this girl was also there trying to get sober, and she's like wailing. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like, I can't, this can't be my life. I swear to God, like, universe, if you can get me out of this situation, I promise you I will figure it out. And I remember, like, thinking about my son at that moment and going, like, he doesn't deserve this. Like, this isn't the path I want for him. And so at the time, I didn't love myself, but I loved my son. And so I used that to fuel me for a really long time. And that's when I got into books. I got into, like, I can't afford therapy. And I had been in so much therapy at that point that I didn't believe in therapy. Like, I had been inpatient hospitalized. I have been on multiple medications. I have been through therapy, like multiple therapists. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with me. I'm a lost cause. So that wasn't the answer for me. But books, I got hardcore into books, self-help section, like every Tony Robbins book, every, like, Rachel Hollis, Brene Brown, like, I bought all of them. But after reading all these books, I was like, okay, well, like, I have an idea of, like, what kind of life I want to live, but, like, they're not pinpointing what's wrong with me. They're just saying, think these happy thoughts and then you'll manifest these great things. But like, I can't help but think negative thoughts. Like, I'm a really dark person. Like, I can't relate to anybody else. And nobody in the self-help world is giving me my answers. And then I ran across this one book and it started talking about trauma. And I was like, hold up, like, what's that? And I started diving into that, and I dove into the trauma section of books, and I found my answer. I was like, that's me to a T. Flashbacks, nightmares, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, like self-sabotaging. I had to rewiring your brain and like learning the word neuroplasticity, like that became my obsession. And after I was hooked up until 2016, I was able to quit drinking for a little bit, but I couldn't help but re-pick it up. I also cigarettes. I was really into cigarettes. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 15, and I was able to quit while I was pregnant with my son, but it was a habit that like I needed to have. And also something that I was able to, once I understood what trauma was, naturally those things started to like alleviate themselves and like fix themselves as I started to hone in on this trauma and started using new coping skills to help me deal with that, with the anxiety and the panic attacks and the stress and the nightmares.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So, and I totally agree with you on the books. It's like and podcasts too, where I feel like there's so many amazing ideas. And it's like, yes, I love this. This is a great theory. This is a great idea. And then it's like, okay, I'm done reading the book. So what do I do? It's like, which is why I love, sometimes like I'll do online courses or, work with different coaches or just like short-term programs or things that are a little bit like the next step, or workbooks. You would like workbooks. I'm obsessed with those. And they go with a lot of those books too. So I love though that you're such an avid learner, and that then with the trauma. And also I feel like those of us that have an addictive brain, we can really use it as a superpower. Like when I want to know something or get something, like I can hone in like nobody's business, and have that just tenacious, like one track mind. And I could probably use it for something really brilliant, but but once in a while, I love that, like the rewiring the brain is huge. And I'm so excited that you're into that. And so let's talk about the coping skills. So what are some of the things you do today in your life that are helping you? Because, like I guess COVID is becoming like normal now. At least we aren't in total shock like we were a year and a half ago, but just the world's still kind of crazy. People are fighting all the time. Like there's just kind of this underlying stress I feel just from the world. And then we have our normal day-to-day stressors. So how are you handling just life today?
So my first biggest tool that I got into was meditation. So I got very deep into meditation. I'm a very reactive, or was a very reactive person. Anything could set me off, and I was always offended, and I was always angry, and I always had something to say. And if I could shock you with my words, like that brought me pleasure. And so I was very mean. And so I wanted to change that part of myself. And so what I started doing was, meditation can give you this new superpower, which is self-awareness. And it's literally just taking a minute to step back, because your brain moves so quickly. And I think that's a symptom of CPTSD, or complex PTSD, is your brain moves so quickly that you can't, it's difficult to like hone in on one thought and just like stay there. Your brain moves so quickly that you can't help but have anxiety. And so meditation, teaching myself to meditate, I remember sitting there and like 30 seconds, I couldn't even do 30 seconds. And so we started with like, I started by myself with these guided meditations, and I would start with like 5 seconds at a time. And I was obsessed with this thought that I needed to clear my head. And I later learned that that's not the point. But anyways, I taught myself that like, instead of reacting to every thought and reacting angrily to everything, I started slowing everything down, or teaching myself to slow everything down, where now my thoughts, I think about them as clouds. Like, these thoughts come in and I just watch them pass. And if I need to think about something, like maybe I do need to do a task today that needs to be completed today, sure, I will allow myself to think about that task, and I will dedicate time to complete that task. I won't let myself um get super overwhelmed with my thoughts. I take a step back and think about the things. Especially martial arts has been a huge help with that, because when punches are being thrown at you, you need to learn how to slow everything down and think. So meditation has been a big tool. You introduced me to EFT tapping, and that has also been such a powerful tool. I remember when we first got together and you had told me about this emotional freedom technique. I went home and I was like, I need to understand what this is. EFT tapping has been a really cool tool. I like how when we're tapping on these points, right? Because my brain is really scientific minded. I Once you understand that everything is energy and that trauma is essentially energy just stored in the body, these tapping on these meridian points really helps you focus on moving that energy and relieving it. So when I use it a lot when I was angry. So if I'm super angry, I am like, I can't even think straight. I'm so angry. I would pull up a Brad Yates tapping video on anger, and I would tap away. And all of a sudden, like, I felt like this relief of anger. And what it is I'm just acknowledging that I'm angry, and then talking myself through it, and bringing, like, switching back to my logical brain. And I really enjoyed that process. So that's become a really good positive tool. I do the Gala Darling manifestation, no, her 5-minute morning
Oh yeah.
tapping video in
Mhm.
the mornings. I've noticed some great things happen in my life since I started doing that almost every morning.
Oh,
So that's been
fun.
really cool. So I've been manifesting things, and like I'll just see them happen, and I'm just like, oh, like this is crazy how much your perception of life controls your quality of life. So
Mm.
EFT tapping. I'm a huge crier. And so this technique is for, like, if I'm in the, like, I'm so angry that I feel like I'm going to cry. And I don't want to at that moment, because maybe I'm setting a boundary, or maybe I am somewhere where, like, cry my work. I can't cry while I'm listening to testimony. I work for the courthouse. I can't cry while I'm listening to testimony. I'm supposed to be impartial. So while I'm there, I will look up to a light, and I will start doing math. So like 5 + 5 is 10, 10 + 10 is 20, 20 + 20 is 40. And so what that does is helps you switch from your emotional brain back into the logical. It usually takes me till I get to like 360, and like all of a sudden I'm able to breathe again, and I'm like, okay, the tears are reeled back in. And then I'm
Oh,
able to, yeah, I'm able to think about, like, oh, I need a break from this situation. Can I take a minute? Or maybe I'm going to tell my boss or my judge, like, hey, like, I need a minute. Like, I'm on the verge of tears, and I pulled it back together for now, but like, I'd like to go to
yeah.
the bathroom. That's another powerful technique that I use a lot.
Oh, wow. I've never heard of that. That's interesting. Because I love the idea that, I cried yesterday for the first time in a couple months, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, it's like I used to hate crying. Like, I was always like a tough person, and I thought like crying is weak and I'm really tough. And I think you and I are similar in a lot of ways. And I mean, I remember like I would bite my cheeks really hard to stop myself from crying. I would punch myself like in the legs really hard to stop myself.
Pinch.
Yeah, which is crazy, like why? No one around me was doing that, but people around me were crying a lot. And I was like, no, one of us has to not be crying, and anyway, I've learned over the past probably 2 years, especially, that I feel way better and I can process things so much more quickly if I just cry. So now it's like, even, that feeling when you're on the verge of tears, but they just won't come? Like, I get frustrated when I have that now. I'm like, come on, let's just cry, because then this will be over in like 6 minutes and we can
Me
move on.
too.
So I'm glad that that's part of your process. And that's so interesting that you have like the work situation where you're like, hold, but let's get back to it when we can so we can move through it.
Absolutely.
Because when we suppress that all the time, it comes out in so many weird ways and can cause other problems, I feel like physically and just to the people around us. So you gotta let it out, guys.
I agree. You have to. I also am in a place where, like, the other week I was trying to get myself to cry. And so I'm putting on all the sad music because you know that you're triggered. Like, something's going on. I'm off. I'm not my normal bubbly self. And I'm not sure what it is, but like a good cry is going to help me move through this. And so I put on all the sad music and I couldn't get myself to cry. Like, I think I got like 2 tears and then immediately dried up. And I was like, it's okay. I see a therapist now. So I'm like, I'll handle it with her. I'll let it go there. And naturally, yeah, like the whole hour, I was like, I thank you for this release with my therapist. And
Oh,
so,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love that. You're like, okay, I've got sad music. We're thinking dark thoughts. We're gonna get this.
Let's move through it. I'm obsessed with like healing. It used to be this thought of like, what's wrong with me? And I need to fix it. But it's no longer about that at all. It's just about, I want to become like, had I not gone through the trauma, who would I have become? What is my highest potential? I want to pass that. I don't want my trauma to be any excuse. The way that my brain is wired right now, I am going to do whatever it takes to get to where it needs to be in order to create what I want to create before I die. And that's such a powerful perception now compared to where before I didn't even think I was going to make it to 27, to be honest. And this is awesome.
Good. What motivates you to keep going? Like, what motivates you to do this work and keep healing? Like, what's that end goal, or what is it in your life right now that's gives you that fire?
I got this from you because you said it so beautifully one day in a podcast. You were being interviewed along with the people from Star.
Yeah.
And what you said is exactly the reason why I do it also. There are people out there that have no idea, that are in so much pain and think the world is so dark and so nasty and don't feel like living and don't understand why they need to continue to live. And they're sitting in their room crying and feeling so alone. And I want to help. Like, I want to give them hope. I want to show them that you could have had the darkest things. And there's people that have had darker things than me for sure. But like with my story, I want to show you that it's possible, that you can become whoever it is that you want to become, regardless of the pain that other people put you through, and that it wasn't you, that it was never about you, that you were enough the whole time. And that realization, I want to help people find that. So that fuels me. Ending domestic violence, right? So we're shooting for the moon, landing amongst the stars. The idea of like saving the people in domestic violence situations, like completely destructing that, like getting rid of it altogether before I die, that fuels me. And then my son, like my son is he has a neurotypical type of brain. And so many other people in the world are going to tell him that so many things are unachievable for him. But I want to prove to him that that's not truth. That's not reality. That's just not how the world works. That the world, that you can do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you focus, you take care of you, and you grow. You focus on growing. You focus on being a student. And for the rest of your life, you'll notice that things that you did not think were possible for you, that other people told you that was not for you, you'll gladly take, and doors will open for you. That don't let other people limit you. And so those things fuel me. They set me on fire. Just want violence.
That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you are just dropping so many nuggets of gold. I love this. Okay, before we wrap up, I just had one other thing to ask you about. So for anyone out there who has considered taking a self-defense class but is nervous and doesn't know what to expect, it sounds intimidating. Can you talk a little bit about like what to expect in a class?
Yeah, absolutely. So my gym environment, so Legacy Jiu Jitsu is family oriented. It is ran by a bunch of guys who are super obsessed with teaching people how to defend themselves. If you want to go into competition, they will do whatever it takes to make sure that you get there. And it's very like inviting and very open, like we no judgment allowed type of situation. And so I was inspired by them to take over the women's combat jiu-jitsu class. And my gym environment, because I my goal is to try to make you feel very warm, invited, welcomed. I want to make you feel empowered. So when you first come to my class, this is very interesting. When you first come to my class, what we learn is I do jujitsu, judo, wrestling, Muay Thai, and boxing. I take those martial arts and I train almost 7 days a week. I take those martial arts, I take the simplest techniques, and my goal is to plant those seeds in you and to inspire you to continue to practice those techniques. So when you come in, I will teach you the basics of the martial arts. I will very beginner friendly. We will walk through all of the steps together. If I notice that you are feeling maybe triggered because a certain position feels very overwhelming, we get through that together. I pretty much know how to see it, and we're there together. And my goal for those people is don't be afraid to take breaks. Go ahead. If you need to go to the bathroom, we've got 3 of them. Go to the bathroom, take a minute, do your breathing exercises. If you don't have any, I'd be happy to teach you and we'll walk through it together. I take that person's hands if they let me. And then we talk through it together, and then they'll go take a minute to go get some water, and then they can come back to the mat. All of my girls, my normal girls that come into my class are very inviting, very inspired to teach themselves, and super understanding. And hopefully you feel since I only teach once a week, those girls or those women that come to my classes, and we're all inclusive, come onto the mat on other days. Like maybe you fall in love with my jujitsu techniques and you're like, jujitsu's it, I want to learn everything about jujitsu. Cool, let me talk you through the warm-ups, teach you how to do the warm-ups so that you can go to the jujitsu classes and like walk in like you know what's going on, right? And equip you with those tools. Muay Thai too, boxing, judo, you want to learn how to throw people into the earth, let me teach you how to do that. And I'll teach you all the basic techniques to help you get into that class so that you don't walk in like intimidated, because now we have boys and girls in both of those classes, right? Like everybody is in those classes, and some of the students that know more, when you're watching them do the techniques, it can feel intimidating, like, oh my god, that person knows so much. But we're very beginner friendly, and I hope all of that made sense.
Yeah. Yes, it did. It did. Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. There's so much great information in here, and we'll also add links to a lot of the things you talked about, the different coping skills you use. We'll add a link to Legacy Jiu Jitsu and maybe some other. I know you have a lot of resources on self-defense, and of course your TikTok and all your social media. I love, love, love what you're sharing. Okay, how long does it take you to make a TikTok?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes they take a few seconds. Like I'll listen to an audio because TikTok is very interesting for creators where like there's a trend and then you can jump on the trend and like cater it to your niche. And my goal with my TikTok is to make people feel like, so the self-help community very much made me feel kind of alien. I used to refer to myself as an alien because I like they're all happy sunshine and rainbows, and that's just not the way that I see the world, right? Like I need that little bit of darkness. So with my TikTok, it's my goal is to like make those people that feel that same way where they feel kind of alienated, but they're still trying to grow, like make them feel validated. Like, yeah, this is part of the healing journey too. You're supposed to feel darkness when you walk, when your path is carved in this way. But
Yeah.
my goal with my TikTok is like, I'll take an audio and then I'll listen to it and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like I know exactly what I want to do with this. And it could take me like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to create this one TikTok. But some of them, like there is this one where like I went in depth with it and I created my own audio for it. And that could take me like an hour. Or
Right.
I'd like to spend a couple hours every other day trying to make TikToks so that I can put out content constantly. I'm having a really good time doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you're having a lot of fun. And I feel like for creators, as long as you're having fun and you're passionate, like just do it. But, like for some of us, it's like, I don't have time, or like, this is hard, it's like, maybe we need to do something else. But I love seeing that. So anyway.
Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I know people are going to get so much out of this conversation. So thanks, Stephanie, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. Have a really good day.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I would love to hear your favorite moments from today, so come say hi over on Instagram. I'm at BlazeBellBliss. If you are ready to release what's no longer serving you and step into the powerful human you came here to be, head over to blazebell.com and use the code podcast for 50% off my online course, Reclaim Your Badassery. Thank you to our incredible sponsor, Elevated Oats. It is time to elevate your adventures, upgrade your health while becoming a granola gangsta, baby. Head to elevatedoats.com today. You are worthy of healing, and I am so glad you're here.